Happy Friday, friend. It's Pastor Greg again on Transforming the World. All this week we've been talking about the attribute of flexibility. Again, not physical flexibility, but a spiritual flexibility. And one of the things I want to end up this week with, all week long I've been kind of talking about allowing God to lead, allowing God to direct, to do as God has commanded, to have our minds focused on doing the will of God. But this last one, I want to talk a little bit about the whole side of flexibility that talks about this. Because one of the understandings of flexibility is to be easily modified. We are easily changed. We are flexible, and I want to talk about that today on Transforming the World. This is a character transformation, a flexibility, not so much a flexibility to be willing to do God's will, but a flexibility to become who God desires us to be. So we're going to attack this today. We're going to dig into that topic today on Transforming the World. Stick around. I'll be back in just a moment. So we started this week looking at question number 4 in the self-evaluation section there. It says, am I looking at life from God's perspective and seeking what he desires? And yeah, we could say that what God desires has a lot to do with what we do or where we go, but also what God desires is who we are, who we become. And are we seeking after that? Are we actually looking to become who God desires us to be? And scriptures talk a little bit about the potter sits down in the wheel, and he takes a lump of clay and he shapes it according to his will, whatever he designs and whatever his purpose is. And we are, spiritually speaking, we're like that piece of clay in the hands of God, who is molding and shaping us into someone that is used according to his will and according to his purpose. Spiritually speaking, this is something that Isaiah talks about, the prophet Isaiah, in chapter 1 of Isaiah, specifically there at verse 20, toward the end of that chapter. God is talking to the people of Israel. He says, look, your sins are really piled up against you. They're like scarlet. Your sins are like blood. They're crimson. But, says God through the prophet Isaiah, if you will obey my commands, and if you will submit, if you will be flexible, spiritually flexible, and surrender yourself to me and obey all that I teach you, I can take that which is stained in scarlet and make it as white as snow. However, God also warns in that he says, if they refused, if they were unwilling to change, if they were inflexible, Judah would be devoured by the sword of the enemies. And I think we all know what Judah did, what they chose to do. They were stubborn rather than flexible. As I said earlier on, the image of God as he looks at us, as he comes alongside of us, God has something in mind for you. He has something in mind for me, the person that he desires us to be. And there are times in our life when he is molding and shaping, working us to become more holy, more set apart for the world, looking to help us become more Christ-like. But see, this is the other thing. See, how do I describe this? We have a tendency to look at ourselves based upon what the world has created. We are a product of all of our regrets. You and I are a product of all the mistakes that we have made. We're a product of all the hurtful things that have been said to us and done to us. And all of these things have a tendency to mold and shape us into the person that we are. which is why there's problems with suicide in the world. It's why people need counseling. Um, because what has ended up happening is individuals have allowed the world to mold and shape them into the person that they are. And so they're either sad, um, perhaps they're angry, or feel fearful, um, a very low self-esteem. They think very poorly of themselves because that's what the world has created. But see, but God doesn't see us that way. God sees us in a way that is beyond what the world sees us. And so God looks at you and he looks at me. He says, if you would allow me, this is my understanding of it. God says, if you will allow me, I can reshape you in a way that is completely different from the way that the world has shaped you. The world has called you worthless. I don't see you that way, says God. The world says that you have no purpose and you have no meaning. The world says be afraid. The world says that your life has no meaning. And God comes along and says that's not true. If you'll just allow me to mold you and shape you, I can help you become the person that you would never imagine. But that takes flexibility. We need to stop being stiff-necked. We need to stop arching our back and surrender ourselves to the loving hands of God, who, as he places us there on that potter's wheel, begins to smooth out all the rough spots in our life that have been caused by the things of this world. And that heart that is filled with sorrow is a heart filled with joy. Anger is turned to peace. Hopelessness is turned to hope. All of these things happen if we are flexible enough to allow God to do his work. Flexibility from a Christian understanding is a willingness to be shaped and molded by God. As I said, we allow the potter to craft us into someone new. Colossians 3:2 says this, to think about the things of heaven, not the things of this earth. And to think about the things of heaven is to imagine ourselves as God sees us, not as the world sees us. So that's the idea of flexibility. That's the topic we've been talking about this week. I hope that you have drawn some encouragement from all of this. Be flexible and go where God leads, serve where God serves, and become who God is trying to help you become. My name's Pastor Greg, and this is Transforming the World. I'll talk to you again next week.